And then the last thing, which I think frankly is the most important, and I'm very excited about this. I think this is the most important thing that I am attempting to introduce into the charter that has come over from the House. It is a requirement that homestead exemptions would be adjusted so as to essentially freeze property values at their current values in 2010 or thereafter at the sales price that someone pays for a piece of their property, their homestead, their home, until such time as the properties are resold and then the values can be reset. Now that's a very important thing I've just said if you don't understand that. And I think and I hope this will give confidence to the citizens of both the city and the unincorporated areas that we're going to deal with what I perceive to have been a major problem over the last several years with the revaluations and the extraordinary numbers of complaints that we have received and the extraordinary numbers of challenges to these reevaluations. We would not be the only place in the state where this is done. We would not be the only consolidated government where this is done. In fact, this has been done in Columbus, Muskogee, and I have spoken to elected officials from their delegation here in the General Assembly, and they speak very, very highly of this process. It has worked extraordinarily well there, and I think this again is a way to ensure that the taxpayers of the new consolidated government will understand that the city and the county, once consolidated, are going to have to operate in a way that is cost effective and brings value to the taxpayers. One final thing I would mention, and that is my version of the charter calls for nonpartisan elections as provided for by law. That is, for any office where state law allows for nonpartisan elections, we would have nonpartisan elections in the consolidated government. That would include the mayor, the commissioners, and I believe I'm correct in saying it would include officers such as the tax commissioner, the coroner, and other things like that. Unfortunately, because of state law, it would not include the sheriff. That would have to be done by a general statewide law, which frankly I have dropped and attempted to do previously in my early days in the Senate. My first session or two, we attempted to do that, and we didn't get very far, but I'm certainly willing to attempt to do that again at a later time. So those, in a nutshell, are the changes that I am proposing to the charter that has come over from the House, HB 1161, and we have provided copies of that to you along with a copy of the map of the 9 districts that I am proposing. And with that, I'm going to stop and see if you have any questions.
How is your map different than Representative Peak's map?
Well, the most obvious difference is going from 7 to 9, and when you do that, then you have, yeah, everything changes. You'll see some similarities, and some of that just has to do with, again, trying to keep somewhat, as best one can, communities of interest. These maps, frankly, are not drawn by me. I'm not sitting there with a computer and a map trying to figure out streets or anything like that. These maps are drawn by the Carl Vinson Institute at the University of Georgia. They provide these services to the General Assembly, and they have the computer programming and modeling that allows the maps to be drawn.
Are they, I mean, racially and then by party, are they similar to what we have now?
Yes, well, they're similar to the maps Representative Peak presented in that what you're going to find, which I think is relative to the population of the total county that would be consolidated, you have about half that would be, I would say, majority African American, about half or not, and then there's one that is essentially 50-50. And I think that's the best way. I agree with Representative Peak on that. I know he worked on that with his maps, and although we're going from 7 to 9, we have attempted to retain that.
And with the inclusion of Payne City, if the voters in Payne City and Payne City only reject this, does the whole thing not happen?
No, just they would not be a part of it.
Okay, but Macon, if Macon rejects it, the whole thing is kaput, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
You have to have both the city and unincorporated areas approving it.
But not necessarily Payne City. They can
I
just
think
opt-
that's
they can
correct.
basically
Payne
opt
City
out.
cannot, yeah, they can opt out, but they cannot stop the consolidation of the city of Macon and the unincorporated areas.
You know, earlier this week, we had a pretty public spat between, you know, Sam Hart and Mayor Rickard, and what I'm wondering is, do you think problems like that, arguments like that, are born of the leadership, or are a direct result of those leaders representing the people? I.e., are the city-county problems that we have problems among the citizenry or problems among the elected leadership?
Travis, I'm not sure how to answer that question. Let me duck and answer it the way I want to answer it. I would say to you, I certainly don't think those public squabbles, or whatever we want to call them, are helpful to this process. I think what the citizens of the city of Macon and the unincorporated areas certainly want to see are our elected officials working together, attempting to solve what are admittedly very complex problems. I don't think it's helpful. I'm going to state very candidly, I don't think it's helpful when they're out there raising taxes, at least at some levels. I know there's been a big debate about that at every level of government within the city, the county, and the school board. I know some of them have backed away from that, but I don't think that's helpful either.
Well, what I'm getting at, though, is if we have these bedrock things we cannot agree on, the consolidation is dead. If we don't have that, and it's just the leadership fighting each other, the consolidation is going to, then their squabbles benefit consolidation. They point toward it.
I'm going to let see if Representative Peake has a word to say on this matter. I do think, in some respects, what we see going on is probably one of the reasons why consolidation is probably needed. It may take consolidation to move beyond some of these impasses that we're currently seeing, or some of the cracks that we're seeing become public. And keep in mind that if consolidation goes before the voters, the election, the consolidation vote would be this November, but it would impact elections the following year. And so in essence, the citizens of the consolidated government will have a chance to have a very important say in the future of a consolidated government by the people they elect to hold the offices, the commissioners and the mayor.
And I would like to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, I would, Cecil's last comments, I think were right on the money. I think it just drives home the need for consolidation. Rather than having two governments fighting against each other, we ought to have one government speaking for the people, trying to get industry and new jobs and economic development into our community. And so I think these squabbles do nothing but confirm the need for consolidation.
Other questions? Yes.
What challenges do you think you face to get this to pass in the city versus in the county?
Well, based on the polling, the consolidation is, frankly, polls much stronger in the city than it does in the county. Now, it passes in both. I mean, there's a majority in both the city and in unincorporated areas, according to the poll. But I do not believe, Representative Peake, you may have some comments on that. I don't believe our problem is with the voters in the city, per se.
I agree. I think the challenge will be in the unincorporated areas, convincing them that there's benefit to them being part of a consolidated government. It's clear through the poll that we did that the majority of people in Bibb County want this. And I don't think you would see Senator Staten and I taking the lead and pushing this forward if we didn't believe the people clearly wanted this, and that the time wasn't now to do this. And so while it may be a difficult sell to people who are unsure about why it would be beneficial, I think once we are able to explain all the benefits and to all the citizenry of our community, I think you'll see this thing pass pretty strongly in November if we get it to the ballot.
And that is exactly the reason why I have made the changes in the charter that I have made. I believe these things will help give confidence primarily to the voters in the unincorporated areas, but also in the city, that we're going to come up with a consolidated government